Hello everyone, Johnny Mine here, and today we're continuing to learn Japanese with Kirby's Adventure. Last time we finished level 2, so World 2. So today we'll start level 3, but before that, since last time we saw this, we have, and of course we have also to read and translate the description. But first we have this new kanji to learn, and so we start with that. Our usual dictionary. I've opened the Warp Star Station page on Kirby, so I can copy the kanji from there. And yes, in Japanese it's Warp Star arrival and departure area, as we'll see. But first, our kanji. We start from this one. To see how we get the modern form, we have to start with the old one. And first and foremost, we have we start from the historical form to see how we got to the old form and then to the modern one. In origin, it was simply a bow firing, releasing an arrow. Then, and that's why we have a bow in the old form of the kanji, and so we study that first and foremost. This is the kanji for bow, as we can see also in its old form, when it was a pictogram. And now we'll check the stroke order as usual. As you can see also with the animation, first we have left to right, top to bottom as a single stroke, left to right, and then everything else going from the top to the bottom as a single stroke. Left to right, top to bottom, left to right, and then top to bottom, left to right, top to bottom. It means bow. As for its readings, there technically are more than one, strictly Japanese ones, but the one that's used nowadays, it's yumi, accented on the last syllable. There technically is also yu on its own, but it's not used nowadays. Yeah, as it says here, yu is usually a prefix, but simply keep in mind yumi, bow. Then we have more than one Chinese readings. The one that's used is Q. Okay, now that we have seen this, we can go back to our kanji that we have to study. But as we can see, there are more elements than just the bow. We'll see the stroke order when we have all of them. Then we have an addition, which originally was this element which we have already seen, the hand holding a tool of some sort, a weapon or a whip. So the meaning is to hit. So most likely it was added as hitting with a bow. But it got somewhat changed in the old form of our kanji, and it became, we see its stroke order. As you can see also with the animation, slanted, left to right, top to bottom, left to right is a single stroke, left to right, slanted and slanted. Slanted, left to right, top to bottom, left to right, slanted and slanted. Well, the bottom component is our usual hand, the one used in modern Japanese as the meaning again, but originally it was a hand. And as we can see in the Oracle bone script, the original form of the kanji, it was a pictogram or ideogrammic compound. Again, we have a hand and then another tool of some kind. Here says, for example, a hammer or something like that. And so the act of beating on nowadays in Japanese, so we'll ignore it. We simply need it as a component of other kanji, including the one we are studying now. And then we have another part, which is the one at the top of our kanji, which is technically composed of two, also a pictogram, but technically composed of two, as there is the right and left foot. So we'll see first and foremost the kanji of foot on its own. Let's see if I can click it, so I'll just copy it here. First we can see its stroke order, top to bottom, left to right, top to bottom, and left to right. We start at the center, top to bottom, left to right, and then top to bottom, left to right. And yeah, in its original form was exactly a pictogram of a foot, a footprint. Originally had that meaning, but then by extension it became to mean to stop, and that's the meaning it has nowadays in Japanese. We have several strictly Japanese readings and meanings, all related to stop. Tomaru, unaccented, to stop moving, to come to a stop. Tomeru, also unaccented, to stop, to turn off, and so the transitive form of the verb. It's not easy to see in the modern form, but form tomaru was originally the classical way to make the passive form of the verb. Then we technically have also todomaru, accented, this one, to remain, and other extended meanings. Then we have also todomeru, also accented, to stop, but in the sense of to stay the night. Other meanings, but the fundamental ones are these ones. You'll more often than see tomaru and tomeru, so focus on those. And then we also have, these ones are also important, yamu, also unaccented, which means to cease, to stop, to be over. And this is more often than not said about things like the rain, for example. So not actions people take, but something like a phenomenon like the rain or something like that does. This is the intransitive form. Then we have also yameru, also unaccented. And this one means is the transitive form and means to stop an activity, to cease, to discontinue, to end, to quit, so on. And this one in particular can be seen quite often. And then I'd say those are the fundamental ones. Technically, it exists also yosu and sasu, but they're barely heard if at all. Fundamental ones, tomaru, tomeru, yamu, yameru. And luckily, the Chinese reading, there's only one, and is shi. So, quite easy, as we'll see then eventually when compounds with these kanji, Chinese compounds with these kanji show up. And so we get back to our component of the kanji, because as we can see in its form, here it's further evolved compared to the original one, but as you can see, it originally was a left and right foot. And then it further evolved and took the form we can see today, usually at the top of other kanji, as a radical. And that's why I didn't mention it, but also the kanji for bow should also be a radical. And this one also is. Let's see its stroke order. Left to right slanted as a single stroke, the comma, the commas that go toward the inside, and then slanted. As you can see also by the animation. Left to right slanted, comma, the two commas, and slanted. This one is also not used on its own, so we'll ignore it. But it was added in this case, in the case of our kanji. Let's ignore this intermediate form, because we got the bow that was in the original form of the kanji, the additional hand with a tool, hammer, or something else to beat, to hit, and so hit with a bow, with fire with a bow and hit something. And then we had the feet at the top because they are actually the phonetic component. And so it's a phonosemantic compound. Now we can see the modern form of the kanji, which is much easier, but unfortunately, at the same time, it means that we don't see again clearly the elements that composed it. But it's easier as we only have the feet at the top, which are the phonetic part, and then everything else is condensed in the form we can see at the bottom. So first, we write the radical of the feet. Again, here it's not shown by the arrows because it starts with that already written, but we have seen left to right slanted, the comma, the two commas, and then slanted. So simply follow that order. Then we go left to right, slanted, top to bottom, left to right, with this additional part point at the end. And yes, we get finally our kanji, which means, well, the fundamental meaning, the original meaning comes, as we have seen, release an arrow from a bow, and so would be emit discharge. And then we get also the meanings start from, depart, and so on. On its own, there are technically several strictly Japanese readings, but they aren't usually used with these kanji. So we'll actually ignore them apart from this one, tatsu, which means to depart on a journey, trip, and so on, to leave, to set off, to start. Sorry. Tattoo. And then we simply have the canon, the Chinese readings, in particular the fundamental one is Hatsu, which is the one we find also in our compound, as we'll see. But we can also find Ho-chi or Hotsu, but usually it doesn't change because anyway it doubles, usually the final T doubles the following consonant. For example, we can see here with the word Hosoku, starting, inauguration, launch, founding, and so on. But yeah, the fundamental Chinese reading, the one you have to remember first and foremost, is Hatsu. Also because it's the one that is used way more often, as can also be seen here with this list. Don't particularly mind the strictly Japanese readings, they're not used that often. It's more often found in compounds, this kanji. With that, we have finally seen it. And then we can move on to the second one. We have technically an older form of also of this kanji, but as we'll see, it's a peculiar case in this one, in this case, the original kanji is this one. We first and foremost have the radical, which is this one, which comes from this. We see its stroke order, even though it's not usually not found in its complete form. More often than not, simply in its shortened one. Top to bottom, left to right, top to bottom, the stroke in the middle, top to bottom, and then the same on the other side, as we can see also with the animation, top to bottom, left to right as a single stroke, top to bottom, and then top to bottom in the middle. As we can see also here, unfortunately we don't have older forms, but it's simply it's grass blades. Technical duplication of grass on its own. We also see that it's identical, just only one. Top to bottom, left to right, top to bottom in the middle. Here we get a slightly some older forms, but they're quite similar. And yes, it's simply sprouting plant, but when doubled, grass blades. And so, as we'll see, in its also in its shortened form, the meaning is grass. It's not neither the singular one nor the doubled one is used nowadays in Japanese, so we'll ignore them. Much more important, we have this form. Technically, it used to be separated, but in Japanese now it's almost exclusively. I think there are some exceptions, but let's ignore that for now. The one you usually find is this one, combined, left to right, top to bottom, and top to bottom, of course, the left one first. Left to right, top to bottom, top to bottom. And of course, this is also a radical, which means has the meaning of grass. So we have that. Then we get the phonetic part. Of course, it's a phonosemantic compound. As we have seen, most compounds are actually of that kind. The phonetic part, some also say semantic, but the fundamental usage, the fundamental aspect is the phonetic one. Is this one? As we can see here on top, it used to have a comma, an additional comma, but in most forms, in the modern form on its own, and also in most compounds, the comma is gone, but it's worth keeping in mind that it exists, as sometimes it can show up again. But we'll see, first and foremost, the form without the comma. Left to right, top to bottom, left to right, then this slanted stroke, and then top to bottom, left to right, top to bottom, left to right, left to right. So, as if you were writing the kanji for earth, soil, then the slanting stroke, and then the one for sun, day, sun/day. As we can see also here with the arrows. But they actually aren't the components in the modern form aren't actually related to the original one, because as you can see it's this one. Here in the explanation says a sugar cane, but others say brushwood, firewood simply, this part at the top. And honestly, it's more useful to remember it that way, because in compounds, this whole kanji seemingly has the meaning of to pile. And so a pile of brushwood, firewood originally. And then at the bottom, a mouth. And then only later it evolved and became the form we see today. It's also useful to remember that it could be brushwood, firewood, because then we have a derived kanji, which has kind of, in this case, the original meaning. As we see, it's used for the verb to boil, but we won't see it today, just was worth mentioning. While this one simply got used for its pronunciation for another meaning, a grammatical one, as we'll see. We have its pronunciations. The strictly Japanese one is mono. As you might remember, we have studied mono, written with another kanji, which means thing as in object, contrasting with koto, which means thing as in matter. But also this one means mono, but means person. As it says here, most likely it was at first a pejorative term, calling people as if they were things, objects. But nowadays it's simply used it's rarely used without a qualifier, as it says here. And as we see, yes, usually there has to be something before it, either a qualifier, as in something modifying it, or also in compounds. And even more than that, then we have its Chinese reading, which is even more common, honestly. As we can find it in compounds, it's sha. And it's a suffix, which means person, in the sense of er, like the suffix er in English. So if we add it to a Chinese compound that has a certain meaning of an action, then we get the doer of that action. So yes, its meaning is now person, as in er, usually in compounds. Okay, now that we have seen this, we have both parts of the of our kanji in its older form. We can see the stroke order here. It's simply writing first the radical of grass, so left to right top to bottom, and then the one for person, but here more in the, of course, in its traditional form, meaning brush wood, firewood, a pile, as we'll see for the meaning of the kanji on its own. Left to right, top to bottom, left to right, slanted, so writing the kanji for earth, soil, slanted, and then the one for sun, top to bottom, left to right, top to bottom, left to right, left to right, as we can see also with the arrows. As we see, it used to have this one, the meanings that the kanji we want to study now has in Japanese. The fundamental one is to attach, to stick to adhere to, and then the extended ones from that. But nowadays in Japanese, and it's used with another meaning, which is the fundamental one is to write, to publish. So potentially related to our meaning of also the phonetic part, as in a pile of writings of someone. And also by extension, because of write and publish, most likely renowned. So we see it's strictly Japanese readings, kunyomi. We technically have a verb, even though it's not arawasu, which means to write, to publish. But as we'll see, there are other arawasu, which are more often used with different meanings, kind of related, but it was still worth mentioning. More common is the adjective ichijirushi, which means more common, relatively speaking, for this kanji, is which means striking, remarkable, considerable. It's quite a long form, and so most likely it's a compound. Here it says from ichi, in this case from anichi, which means very, and then shirushi, clear, obvious, conspicuous. I wonder if okay, here it doesn't mention it, so we'll stick with that explanation for now. And we have the Chinese reading used for this kanji nowadays is cho, which is found, for example, funny enough, considering the kanji we have studied, chosha, accented on the first syllable, which means author, usually of a particular book, writer, more in the sense of author, the author of this work, and so on. As we see, there are other compounds, Chinese compounds for writer, other terms in general. But yes, as the meaning of the kanji we have, as we have seen, is also to write, as in the sense of to publish also. Then by adding sha, we have seen, we can see one use of the sha as a suffix, write, Okay, oops, sorry, not this one. Then we finally go back and we get this form derived from the kanji we have just seen, the one for to write, publish, and also notable. Sorry. We get this form, which is we have the fusion of the elements at the top and some changes. And then it, in Japanese and also some varieties of Chinese and so on, it's now used with some specific meanings that the other kanji used to have and now are strictly of this modified form. But before seeing that, as we can see in its modern form, we have at the bottom I, the kanji for I, which we have seen. But at the top we have another kanji, another form, even though in this case it's simply due to the fusion of those elements, we'll still see it on its own, as it's worth studying, since it's a common, sorry, not this, but this part, yes, this one. It's also a radical. On its own, the stroke is not slanted. It goes like this, as we can see also with the animation. The commas at the top, left to right, left to right, left to right, and then the top to bottom in the middle. The commas, left to right, left to right, left to right, top to bottom in the middle. As we can see also here with the arrows. As we can see in its original form, the pictogram, it's a picture of a ram's head. And so, in Japanese, it means sheep. Its strictly Japanese reading is hitsuji, unaccented. It's not completely clear from its origin. There are several theories. Most of them say that it's a compound of some part plus the term for ushi, cow, cattle, because it was somewhat similar, of course, only relatively so. For example, by combining it with hige, as we'll see, facial hair, with a person, hito, an older form of the verb to raise, and so on. But just remember that in its reading is hitsuji, unaccented, and means sheep. Then we have the Chinese reading that it's used nowadays is only yo, but it's worth remembering, at least I'll mention it because as we'll see it will show up, sho, but only because it shows up in compounds, in some compounds, but the fundamental one, which is the more often the one used in compounds and also as the phonetic component of other kanji is yo. And again, it's also a radical. But yes, in our case, it's simply the fusion of those elements we've mentioned of the original kanji. And we can see its stroke order in Japan. In Chinese, it's different because the middle part is fused with the slanted stroke, and so it's written as a single one. But let's focus on the Japanese one. The commas, left to right, top to bottom, then left to right, unlike the one we have seen for sheep. But that's simply because then we close the top part with left to right and left to right. So the commas, left to right, top to bottom, left to right, slanted. And then we simply write the kanji for I, top to bottom, left to bottom as a single stroke, and the left to right strokes. As no, that one is simply the Chinese one, so I'll repeat it myself once it's finished the animation, so I can do it with it. Comma, left to right, top to bottom, left to right, slanted, and then the I, so top to bottom, left to right, top to bottom, left to right. And it's quite, as we have seen, the fundamental meaning of the other kanji, when it used to be there used to be only that one, was to attach to stick to adhere to. And because of that, we get the extended meanings, which are the fundamental meanings of the kanji now in Japanese nowadays, which are to arrive, to stick to the place you arrive to, and even more so to wear clothing, and so because the clothes stick to you. Most likely that's why we have these meanings. So we have technically several strictly Japanese readings. The ones that matter for us are tsuku, accented, which means to arrive at, to reach. Then also we would have tsukeru, even though more often than not it's, well, often it's written in kana alone, and so there's no distinction between the kanji, but when written with kanji, more I've seen it usually as the other one, but it's still worth mentioning because tsukeru is the meaning to attach, to join, to connect. We have seen it multiple times in compounds, usually in verbal compounds. So the fundamental ones are tsuku, to arrive, tsukeru, technically not often used, but it's worth remembering just because it's the original meaning, to attach. And then last but not least, kiru, unaccented, which is the verb to wear, to put on, from the shoulders down. And so of t-shirts, of kimono, for kiru, kimono comes from this verb, kiru, then being a ru verb, it's done verb, we drop the ru, and we get ki. It's a continuative form, and so also to make, in this case, the noun, literally wearing, so cloth. And then we had mono. Mono, as usual, as we have seen, thing as in object. So object that you wear, literally kimono, means that. And as we'll see, you can find also the readings usually gi, because it would technically be ki, but then it gets we add the dakuten because it's a compound with the second part, the second component, strictly Japanese. So usually gi is a suffix for clothes, outfit, uniform. And then we technically have kiseru, also unaccented, which would mean to put clothes on someone, to dress, to clothe, and then extended meanings, most likely an older form, a classical form of causative, the causative of kiru. And so that's why it's to put clothes on someone, to dress someone else, to cause someone to put clothes on, literally. So yes, we have, as I mentioned, the original meaning would have been tsukeru, but it's not usually used with this kanji, but it's worth remembering because it's to adhere to, attach to, and so on, from which we have the extended meanings, which are the ones used nowadays, to arrive, tsuku, to arrive at. Then we have kiru, unaccented, unlike the other ones which were accented, to wear, from the shoulders down. As we'll see, there are other verbs for other parts of the body, to wear on other parts of the body. And kiseru, to put clothes on someone, a causative form, even though not formed as we usually form the causative nowadays in modern Japanese, because it's a classical form, most likely. And last but not least, we have the Chinese reading. The one that's used nowadays is only chaku, which, yes, as a can be used also as a suffix for arrival, arriving at. As a counter, we'll ignore the other ones, but the one counter for items or suits of clothing, because, of course, of the two meanings that this kanji has nowadays. And so with that, we have finally seen our kanji. And so we can finally see the word of the title of that place. We have hachaku, which means arrival and departure. Of course, in Japanese, it's actually in reverse. We have hatsu, which means departure from release, but these could also be, as I'll show in a second, shortened forms also of other compounds, Chinese compounds. And then chaku, which means arrival, to arrive, departure, starting from, and then to arrive. As we can quickly see, we have also the compounds on their own. Shuppatsu should be an accented, yes, it's an accented departure. We see that other kanji, it's the one for deru, to exit. And then we also have tochaku for arrival, and also an accented. As we see also another kanji which has the meaning more to reach, and then by extension arrival, and then the one to arrive. And then we simply add, we can leave here and go back to our screen. We have, as we have seen, arrival and departure. And then simply our kanji we have already studied, which means place. So literally place of departure and arrival, technically because of the order of arrival and departure. And so it became quote-unquote station in the English localization. But yes, it's literally the place of departure and arrival of warp star. Warp star, of course, also plural potentially, as we'll see. It's the case, warp stars. Okay, and with that, I'd say we can take our usual break now, so that when we are back, we'll continue. We'll actually start playing the game. Of course, first and foremost, we'll have to see that location, our warp star station. Okay, as usual, see you in around 5 minutes. And we are back. And now we can actually start playing the game. Our usual intro, which we're skipping. The file select, we still don't have a high enough percentage to have a new title, so we straight up open our file and start level 3 battle building. Although, as I mentioned, we're actually, I'll show the animation again this time, since we've seen it at the end of the previous stream. But before actually starting level 3 battle building and with stage 1, we're going back, because as I've said, we have this to check out. As we have seen, the title is, the name of this place is Wapu Star Hatsakujo. So, Warp Star, also plural, and in this case it will eventually be stars, as we'll see. And then we have our compound Hatsaku, departure and arrival, literally, arrival and departure in English, unaccented. And then we had Jo, place. So the compound, as we've seen before, most likely when we add the jaw should be unaccented. Hopefully it is also in this case, so Hatsaku jaw. And so place of departure and arrival of warp stars. And now we can finally check its description. Kono basho kara hoka no level ni warp suru koto ga dekiru zo. First we have kono, the demonstrative adjective. As a reminder, we have the koso a to series. Ko, close to the speaker. So, far from the speaker, close to the listener. A, far from both. And do, the interrogative. Then, in our case, we had no to make the adjective. Kono, sono, ano, dono, interrogative. As a reminder, the accent is unaccented for all the distances except for the interrogative, which is accented on the first syllable. So in this case we have this plus a noun, which in our case is basho. We check its accent, but it's the meaning is place. As you can see, guess, based on what we have seen before, ba, the ba in basho is the one we can see also in the name of this location. That jo is its Chinese reading, while ba is the strictly Japanese one. And in this case, it's a peculiar compound, as usually when we find compounds, they're all Japanese, all strictly Japanese words, or all Chinese readings. But sometimes, like in this case, we can get a strictly Japanese word combined with one from Chinese, and vice versa, the other way around, Chinese plus strictly Japanese. As we'll see, sho is the Chinese reading of the other kanji, that means place, because its strictly Japanese reading is tokoro. I want to check. Okay, unaccented. Tokoro. also toko, and that one is accented on the last one, but the most common one is tokoro. But yes, in our case we have basho, unaccented, and yes, means it's one of the ways to say place, location, spot, position, area. So fundamental meaning place. So we have this place, then we add the particle kara, from this place, then we have hoka, which is technically a noun, which would mean, let's see its accent, okay, unaccented, which means on its own, another place, some other place, somewhere else. Also by extension outside, but as we'll see, there's a word or a more specific word for outside, so another place. But when combined with, like in this case, the genitive particle, the possessive particle no, it becomes another person or thing, and so the following noun, another of the following noun, other, different, and also other, and so different, and so on. 10 other meanings, but let's focus on this one as they are the fundamental ones. On its own, another implied place. When with the possessive particle no, another of that noun, the following noun. In our case, reberu should be accented, but it's our usual level. As a reminder, level in Kirby games means actually word. So from this place, another level, and then we have the particle ni, which in this case it's the meaning towards. As we have seen, there's also another particle with the meaning towards, which is he, pronounced e, but written with the kana, hiragana, he, which is that one means more towards, as in simply the direction. This one as in the destination, but in translation simply towards. So we have from this place to another level. Then we have wapu, of course warp, just like in warp star, as we can see also in the name of the place. Then we add the verb suru, literally to do, and so literally to do a warp, to warp, as we have seen with terms from other languages and also Chinese compounds. When we add suru, we make the verb of that corresponding noun. And so warp, as in the verb. Then we have koto, accented on the last syllable, which, as we have mentioned before, is a thing as in matter, and so also fact. Then the fact of warping, also used as a nominalizer of verbs. Then we add the subject particle ga, and then last but not least the main verb dekiru, to be able to do. And so this whole construction, we have seen it before, koto ga dekiru, be able to do, literally the fact of doing the action of the main verb before this construction. A more elaborate way to make to say to be able to do that action instead of simply making the potential form. As a reminder, the kiru on its own works as a replacement form for suru, for the potential form of suru, since it already means be able to do, instead of making the potential form of suru, we always replace it with the kiru. Being a potential form is the reason why we have the subject particle ga, as that is usually the rule. Last but not least, we have the final sentence particle zo, which has force, or also can indicate a command. In this case, I'd say it simply has force, and it's a male term or language. And so the translation becomes, from this place, you implied warping, literally the fact of warping to another level is possible, and so an easier translation becomes, from this place you can warp to other levels. Then we can see the rest of the sentence. Suji no tsuita hoshi ni matagari iza shuppatsu. We have first and foremost the word suji. Let's check its accent, but it means number. Literally, it's a Chinese compound, which means number and then character. Ji is the same seen in kanji. Kanji means literally means Chinese characters, literally of the Han, but by extension Chinese in general. And is also, just like kanji, suji is also unaccented. Then we have no, which could seem like the possessive particle, but in this case it's a subject particle, because as we'll see, we can replace ga as the subject particle with no in relative clauses, and this one, as we'll see, it's a relative clause. Sometimes it's used to avoid saying ga in the relative clause and then also in the main one. Sometimes it's simply replaced because it's just because. And so we have our subject. Then we have the verb tsuita from tsuku. And here we see it again. In this case, it's not the tsuku in the sense to arrive at, which we have studied with that kanji, but the one which means to be attached, to be connected with, to adhere, and so on. As we have seen, most likely related, both the word itself and also the kanji, but when written with the kanji, usually a different one is used nowadays. But yes, means to be attached. Then we change it into its sta form. Being a u verb, codan verb, we have to follow the different rules. Being in ku, it becomes I ta, because of the step, intermediate step, tsukita, and then the k dropped, tsuita, because it was easier to pronounce most likely. So, and the ta form of a verb is used to make the plain, the past in the plain speech. But before seeing the translation, now we have to add, since we have said that this is the relative clause, it precedes and modifies the following noun, which in our case, hoshi. Hoshi, as we have seen, we have already also studied the kanji, because it's also in the title of this the Japanese title of this very game. Hoshi, unaccented, should be, yes, it's unaccented, means star. So the translation so far would be the star, the stars, as we see, plural, with numbers attached, implied to them. Then we have the particle ni, which in this case I'd say would mean to, but it depends on the following verb. So we'll see that first. Matagari here from should be matagaru. And so yes, matagaru, let's check its accent. Honestly, it's not that often heard, but it means to straddle, to sit astride, to mount. As we see, usually in Japanese there's another verb which means to ride, which is more often used, as can be used to ride also, of course, the usual horses, but also by extension to ride public transports like trains and so on. And that one is the more way more often used than this one, but in our case it means we have this one, so matagaru. Let's see, accented, okay, so matagaru. Mount, and so the ni means mount on the star. That's why we have the ni. As we see, it's also used for the other verb I mentioned, to ride. When you get on something, we can find this particle. Also because more in origin, most likely, it implied a contact. And that's why they use this particle ni. then we change it into its it's a U verb, codan verb, so we can change the U into I to make the continuative form. In this case, let's say it's simply a way to make the to say and do the action we have seen, so to mount and the rest of the sentence. So far we have mount to straddle the stars, sorry, because as we see eventually they're plural, with literally numbers attached. And then we have the rest of the sentence, starting with isa, which is an adverb and also an interjection accented on the first syllable, isa, which means now, as in come now, well. Sometimes this one can be found, but another form which is more used, I'd say, is sa, also accented on the first one, which also means has several meanings, but also this one, come now. But as we can see here, it can be also this other form can be found sometimes, isa. And then we have shuppatsu. Technically, shuppatsu unaccented. We've already seen it. But being when I or U are at the end of a word, and in this case even the sentence, and are preceded by an unvoiced consonant, they're barely heard, if at all. So you often hear it also as and definitely this one would be a case where you'd hear it like that, shuppatsu, instead of shuppatsu, shuppatsu. As we have seen, shuppatsu means departure. So most likely in this context, an implied imperative, or even better, as we have seen, since it's so beloved in Japanese, the volitional form. And so let's, being a Chinese compound, so we would have, if explicited the verb suru, we change it into its volitional form shio. In plain speech, in polite speech would be shimashou. But yes, most likely implied the volitional form, so the translation becomes mount the stars with the numbers attached, and come now, let's set off. And with that we have seen this description. And yes, this is where you can warp to other levels. I've always specified stars because now we have only one, which brings you to level 1. You can see it, so you can see also the animation. I'm also curious if you... Okay, no, if you enter that way, then you don't see the animation anymore. But yes, if we had other levels unlocked, for example, when we'll finish level 3, we would have here also the a star with the 3 above it. But now we'll take the one with 2, go back to level 2. Enter the door that says go forward, advance, Susumu. As we have seen before, the other one says go back, return, Modoru. Don't remember the accent, I'll just check them so that we can... I think maybe unaccented both, but I could be wrong. Let's see. Okay, Susumu unaccented. Modoru. Okay, Modoru accented instead. Okay, it was just Susumu. Okay, and with that we can finally start level 3, stage 1. Okay. Butter building, so we can see the building, the background. Get sword, which we have already got before. Of course, if I don't immediately lose it. Almost got parasol instead. Okay, we technically have this, so we'll actually get it now. Crash, which we have actually seen before, I'm pretty sure, so we don't need to check the description again. Ah, okay, well, I'll actually use Crash here, as I don't want those enemies to fall on me. Ah, okay, I should have kept it for this, or used another ability. And of course we'll check the ability from this mini-boss, mid-boss. I think in Kirby games they're usually called mid-bosses, in that they're not necessarily in the middle of the stage. Yeah, we can get this copy ability, Mike, which I think we've ignored before because we were close to the end of the stream, but now we have time, so we'll check it. Mike, as we can see in its Japanese name, Maiku. Mike, simply pronounced in Japanese. Let's check the accent, but should be on the first one. Technically, an abbreviation of microphone, just like in English. So microphone in Japanese with the H, because they got it, of course, when they didn't have the F combination, the F sound yet. In its extended form, it would be microphone, so accent on the ro. While in this shortened one, the most common one nowadays, of course, just like in English, maiku, accented on the first syllable. We can see now its explanation. Tottemo daisuki na uta dakedo 3回しか歌えないんだ. First we have tottemo, which comes from totemo, should be unaccented. Yes, unaccented. Tottemo, with the doubling of the consonant, is a more emphatic form, but the meaning is the same. Totemo, I think we have seen it also before, means very. The adverb very, very. and also that when the phrase is the sentence is affirmative. When the verb is negative, then we get the same meaning but in the negative. So very then becomes not at all, by no means, simply, cannot. Of course, then it depends on the verb that we have. But yes, the fundamental meaning is very. Then we have an adjective, daisuki na. As we can see by the na at the end, it's a na adjective. Daisuki, technically a compound between dai, the prefix for big, and then ski. Ski, we have seen it before, is preferred, favorite, liking, and it's the most common way to say that you like something in the with the structure someone wa, something ga, ski, and then the copula da in the plain speech, des in the polite one, register. Because literally, as for someone, something is liked, is preferred, and so on. In this case, then we have big liking, big, and so daisuki. Actually accented on the first syllable, so daisuki means liking very much, loving of something or someone, and so on. So in our case, well, first, since it's an adjective, let's see the following noun which it modifies. In our case, uta. Let's check its accent, but it means song or also singing. Okay, is accented on the last syllable, uta. So it's the song, but in our case I'd say the singing you love so much, I'd say in translation, literally very, very much. Then we have the copula, da. It's the song that technically being, since we have that it's the song, it's the very, very much loved song. Could also be seen that ski and the preceding totemo, daisuki and preceding totemo also are as a relative clause with an adjective instead of a verb in this case. The singing, sorry, in this case, the singing that you implied, that as for you implied, is love, is preferred so much, very, very much. Then we have kedo. As we have seen before, it's the most common way to say but, from keredo almost not used. Keredo more used. And of course politer than kedo, which is the shortest form. But kedo is used a lot. And so, as we said, the meaning is but. And so we can see then the rest of the sentence. San kai. We have the 3, which in this case is most certainly read as san with its Chinese reading, because then we have kai, which is a counter. We've seen it, I think, before, which means we can see it from here without the kanji, but in this case it's most certainly the one with the kanji for the counter for occurrences, number of times. So 3 times. Then we have the particle shika, always used with a negative verb, with the meaning nothing but, except no more than. No more than is the best translation, or also nothing but, to keep the negative form of the verb or adjective at the end. No more than 3 times. And then we have the verb utaenai, as you might have guessed from it's from uta, but in this case the verb utau, unaccented, this one, so be careful, as uta on its own is accented on the last syllable, while the verb is unaccented, utau. Utau means to sing. Then, being a u verb, Kodan verb, we change the u into e. And then technically I add ru, even though it's not seen here because of further conjugation, to make the potential form can sing. And then the potential form is a ru verb ichidan verb, so we can drop the ru and add nai, again an adjective which means to not be, as in there isn't, but is also used as to make the negative in the plain speech of verbs. And so cannot sing. Then we have, last but not least, da, contraction of no da. No, as in the nominalizer of the verb, and so also in our case the fact. And then of course we have da, which is simply the copula. And so this structure no da also contract, as we can see here, as in da, means the expectation is that, the reason is that, the fact is that, the explanation is that, it is that. And so, since makes sense, since we have an explanation here, so the translation becomes it's the singing that you love very, very much, but the fact is that you can't sing more than 3 times. Okay, we can see the second part. でも、なぜ歌っているだけなのに敵がやっつけられるのかなYeah, it's pretty funny as we'll see this part. First we have demo. We've seen it before, means however. The conjunction, we can see the distinction that kedo is used as but between in a single sentence to connect 2 parts of it, while demo is at the start of one. Literally is a composed demo of de, which in this case would be the te form of the copula, and then mo. Even, also even the inclusive particle, but the form, the te form of a verb, in our case the copula, with mo means even, and that's why the mo is used, even though. So, even though it is implied what has been said before, so the whole first part of this description, even though it's like that, naze is an adverb accented on the first one and means why. As we'll see, there are other ways to say why in Japanese. This is one of the most common ones and technically also one of the politer ones. So, naze, why, for what reason, why. Utatteiru, we see again our verb utau. We then have to make the te form. So, being a verb, u verb, godan verb, we have to follow the rules. Ending in u, it becomes double consonant te. Again, because originally it was actually the verbs ending in u, as in u, not the general category, but those in u, like utau, were actually in hu, from pu. And so because of that, P actually caused utapi te. Of course, not easy to. It's much easier to say utate. Also, most likely because the E fell, and so utapte. No, of course, Japanese couldn't pronounce it, so it became a double consonant. Utapte. We have to make the te form in this case to add then iru. As we have seen, it's the verb to be, as in to exist, of animate objects, people and animals. But also to stay by extension. But the combination te iru in Japanese has the meaning, has two meanings, two fundamental meanings. The be doing the present continuous in English, so a continuing action, and also a continuing stage. So technically with have, add of course from the verb, so present perfect, but let's stick to the Japanese, either continuing action or continuing state. In our case, since we have a verb like utau, it's more of a continuity of a continuing action. So well, we have to first see the following parts to even make the translation so far. Then we add dake. Dake is a particle which means only. Here in the affirmative, unlike shika above. Then we add na to connect it to the following part. It's required actually by the following no ni. No ni means despite, although, even though, despite. So our translation so far becomes but why despite even though you of Kirby are just only singing, and then we have the rest of the sentence, starting with teki. The usual, we have already even studied its kanji, enemy, also opponent, rival, but of course in the context of a video game like Kirby, enemy. In our case, enemies plural as in general, and also you want to use it when there's more than one of then the subject particle ga, and then the verb yatsukerareru. The verb is yatsukeru. We've seen it before. It's a compound verb from yaru. Should be unaccented, but we'll check it again just to be sure. And it's the fundamental meaning is to do, just like suru, but this is a colloquial word, like suru. But in our case, it means to do by extension, in the sense of to harm, to injure the enemy. Then again, we have skeru. We have mentioned before, to attach, to join, to connect, to add. And so yatsukeru, accented just like skeru, luckily. It technically would be ya yaru, we change it into the u into e to make it's a u verb, Godan verb, so we can change the u into e to make the continuative form, to make the compound. But since it's a peculiar one because it doubles the following consonant instead. So yatsukeru, the meaning is literally to apply harm, to add harm to the enemy. So to attack an enemy, to beat an enemy. Then, being yatsukeru a ru verb, Ichidan verb, we can change the the ru, since it's a ru verb, into ra. Then, technically, we should add re ru. In this case, it could be a mistake or also simply an unusual shortened form. But either way, this is the passive form of the verb. And that's why the enemies are the subject. The enemies are beaten. And then we add the no, which is could be simply the nominalizer of the verb, or also and also a bridge for the following. Well, in this case, it's a nominalizer. So the fact. Why it's the fact that the enemies are beaten. And last but not least, we have kana, which is a peculiar form, a sentence particle, final sentence particle, an interrogative one, technically, as we can see since it comes from ka plus na. Ka on its own is the typical interrogative particle, so in Japanese usually you put that to make the interrogative, make a sentence interrogative. But with kana, the meaning becomes I wonder, as in is it? And so the translation becomes however, why, even though you are just singing, the enemies it's the fact, I wonder why it's the fact that the enemies are defeated, and so a better translation in English would be however, why you are even though you are just singing, the enemies get defeated. And so yes, it's funny because as we first it says it's the song, the singing, the song that you implied that Kirby likes, loves so much, can only be used 3 times, and then the one speaking, or Kirby, wonders why the enemies get defeated even though Kirby is just singing. And that's because, as we'll see, Kirby's singing is peculiar. And so yes, it's pretty funny, as we'll see, by using it here, for example. Yeah, there he used that. Let's see the other ones. Okay, this is quite interesting. Also, let's get this. Wonder what's down here. Unfortunately, I can't. Yeah, as we've seen, then it gets that. Okay, no, we have to go there to get to the. Yeah, it's here. Perfect. To get to the button. Okay. These buttons are quite important because these are needed for completion. If you don't press it, you only finish the stage. So far we have seen that there were you simply got to the end of the stage and so both finished and completed it. Some levels, even going forward, will be still like that, but other ones will have one of these buttons, and when you press it, you unlock a new part of the overworld, of the level, as in the world, outside of the stages. And so yes, we'll have to try to press them all. I'll try to do it on my own, but of course check guides if needed. Let's keep... Oh boy, I wanted to show it, please, please. Unfortunately, we missed it, but of course we'll get Mike again, so we'll see what the third singing of Kirby is. We barely... well, we have seen it also now another... when you get hurt, you see the reading Ita from with small 2 at the end, so it gets stopped immediately. Ita. But it comes from Itai. Can also be heard Ita on its own, but it comes from Itai, an adjective which means accented. Wanted to check that. Which means painful, sore, and so yes, when of course Ita also shortened becomes a kind of ouch, but it comes from the adjective which means painful. Then we saw for a second, while we absorbed an enemy with nothing, Ska, Su-ka, of course, then the U between the unvoiced consonants becomes barely heard if at all, accented on the last syllable, also because most likely of that. And it's a noun, which means disappointment, letdown, miss, failure, also losing of a lottery. And yes, the disappointment of not getting anything. And with that, we can finish this stage. Okay. I'd say that we don't have much time, so we'll tackle this arena. We have already seen it and studied its kanji. Funny enough, the jaw we have found also in our new world, our new area. So we'll defeat this boss. Of course I should try to do so without losing, but it's Easier said than done. Okay. Okay. Well, of course, if I miss, then it takes more than expected. Okay, can get that. So we can heal. We get wheel, but we have already seen it. Okay, we'll try to tackle stage 2 quickly. Okay, we wanted the wheel because of this. We should be able to tackle it quickly if we can. Simply, if we don't get new abilities. And honestly, now we get this, which is a really cool area of the game, because there's this tower that rotates and we move forward and then the door opens. Okay, we get that. Well, we'll ignore the new ability for now, also because honestly it's more of an obstacle here than anything else. Can't even get the spark. We try to get sword here. And hopefully not die, even though we only have 1 health left. Okay, we wanted an ability like sword to open this. Okay, then we get actually this mini boss again. Try to defeat it. Don't remember if we actually need it or not. That's why I actually want to get it. Okay. If it's here, it could be also simply an obstacle, honestly, a trap room, but we might want it. Yeah, maybe for that part above. Yeah, we definitely want it. Okay, okay, so we can avoid getting hit by those cordos. Let's see, okay, nothing. Let's enter the door. Okay, we technically have new abilities there. Of course, I got defeated because... but we'll ignore them for now. We'll try just to get our prizes. Not going for... well, we'll open it, but yeah, not going for that maxing tomato since we are at full health. I think we got... well, no, we got to see it before in the copy ability description, so we actually haven't seen it before. We'll check quickly how long the description of this ability is in-game. Well, of course, if I can first and foremost defeat the enemy, the mid-boss, because it is easier said than done, especially if I do such mistakes, so actually taking longer than expected. No, nope, can't get it. I would have had to get it, but don't want to for reasons. Well, to not check the description of that also. We'll see. If it's not too long, we'll check this one at least. Please, yes, thank you. Okay, we finally managed to defeat it. And we get backdrop. Okay. Yeah, I don't think we've only seen it in the intro, so we'll quickly see it. Luckily, it's not too long. Its name is backdrop that we have seen before, but we check the accents again. Backdrop. Okay, backdrop. Accented on the do in the compound. Also, baku on its own, accented on the first syllable. And actually, doropu on its own on the ro, doropu. While it becomes baku doropu. But yes, then we have the actual description. Roresra no yona. Sugoi nage waza. First we have pro wrestler. From English, pro wrestler. We check the accent. We can find it. More often than not, you see it shortened, and that one is as puro resu for the professional wrestling. Of course, in this case, we have professional wrestler. But considering that that one is unaccented, maybe also this one, puro resu. Verify it. Then we have the possessive particle no. Then yo, which literally we have seen it before, means form, style, way, method. When used after a noun, it also becomes from form, style, it also becomes like, similar to. So, like a pro wrestler. It takes, if it modifies the following noun, it gets the na, just like na adjectives, even though it's technically a noun. The following noun, in this case, it's actually has an adjective of its own, sugoi. Sugoi means technically terrible. But it's actually used also in a positive sense of terrific, and so then also amazing, great, wonderful. And so yes, that's its actual most common meaning: amazing, great, wonderful. The closest translation would be terrific, accented by the way. And then we have nagewaza. We've seen it when we've seen it in the intro. It's a compound from nageru, which means it's the verb to throw, accented. Okay. It's a ru verb, incident verb, so we drop the ru to make the continuative form. In this case, to actually to make the noun, to make then the compound noun. And then we had waza, accented on the last one. We have seen it because we have studied the kanji technique. And so literally throwing technique. An incredible an amazing throwing technique like that of a pro wrestler. Then we have the rest of the sentence, which is Teki o suikomi tsukamaete kara Mutsu no arawaza o tsukai konase. First we have again Teki, enemy, an accented, then the object particle o, then the verb suikomi from, in this case in the continuative form, suikomu should be accented. We've seen it before from su, which should be it's unaccented, which means to inhale, breathe in. Komu on its own can also mean to be crowded, to be packed, but after, as the second part of a compound verb, it means, in our case, go in, to go in. So literally, to breathe in. Of course, being su, verb, golden verb, we change the u into e to make the continuative form, to the compound verb. And then we make the continuative form of the compound verb. It's in u golden verb also, so u into e to make the continuative form suikomi. In this case, I'd say simply in the with the meaning and, we'll see with the rest of the sentence. Then we have tsukamaete kara, but the verb is tsukamaeru, which means to catch. We check the accent. To catch, to capture, and so on. To grab also. Tsukamaeru unaccented. Which we have to make the te form, so it's a ru verb, it's done verb, so we can simply drop the ru and add the te, tsukamaete. And then we add kara. In this case, the combination te kara means after doing the action of that verb, so after absorbing, breathing in, inhaling the enemy and catching it, and then we have the rest of the sentence. We'll see it. Mutsu, first and foremost. The 6 is read with its Japanese reading because we have the tsu, the general purpose counter. So mutsu with mu, double consonant tsu, should be accented on the last syllable. Yes, it is. Then we add the possessive particle no to connect it to the following word. Six, general purpose counter, off, simply needed to connect it, and so 6, that's something, there are 6 of that, of those. Then we have a word, arawaza, unaccented, okay, which comes from ara, actually from arai, which means most likely, and also I've seen the kanji in the dictionary, but I would have guessed this one honestly in this case, in this case, RI unaccented means rough, wild, violent, rude, coarse, harsh, fierce, and so on. Those are the fundamental meaning. Rough, wild. And then we have waza. In this case, technically written with a different kanji, so which would mean has the same accent as waza technique, which means did, act, work, performance. And this compound has two meanings. One is physical labor, because as we've seen, waza can also mean, with this kanji, we'll see it eventually, means work, and so manual work, as in rough work. But it can also mean, especially in martial arts, drastic move, power technique, display of power, and so this is our case. 6 drastic moves, then the object particle o, and then we have the verb tsukai konase from tsukai konasu. We've seen it in both this series and the previous one. From tsukau, unaccented, which means to use. We change the u, it's a u verb, codon verb, we change the u into e to make the continuative form, to make the compound. Then konasu, also unaccented, literally to digest, so also to break down, and by extension to be able to use, to finish, to complete, and so on. As we've seen, so the compound tsukai konasu, accented, unlike its components which are both unaccented, so be careful, means to master a tool, in our case a technique. And so the translation becomes, after inhaling the enemy, and catching it, master. Sorry, forgot to mention that we have the verb. We change it's a u verb, codon verb. We change the u into e to make the imperative form. So command. And so after inhaling the enemy and catching it, master 6 drastic moves, power techniques. And so we have seen backdrop, and it's actually the end of the stage. So even though we went slightly beyond our usual hour, we managed to finish that and see this ability. Next time we'll continue level 3 battle building, funnily enough, with stage 3. Let's close the game as usual. Let's check if it has saved. Yes, and we have a high enough percentage to have a new title, so we check that also next time at the start. Since we don't have more kanji, we can also continue with the intro and so the story intro this time. And yeah, that will be as usual on Monday. On Sunday, I'll play at a different hour, 3 p.m. for me, but you can check in the description of my channel, and of course when I publish the stream also there, at what hour it's for you based on your time zone. And on Sunday we'll play a game mostly just for fun. I have yet to decide which one, but we'll see. So it will be a surprise. Okay, so see you on Monday for the continuation of this very series, and on Sunday for a game played mostly just for fun. Okay, see you next time.